February 17th of 2023 marks the first chapter of the JOJOlands releasing, and 1 year later 12 chapters have been officially released. And in that time, reading and analyzing the story as it has been coming out, I have a lot of different opinions to say about this part. Good, the bad, and a little bit of the funny. Within this first year, the JOJOlands has been gaining its weight and has been steadily growing as a part, but does it compare to its previous predecessors once the critiques and criticisms start flying? Well, let's figure that out. Hello, my name is Metas, and welcome to the review. So what I will quickly do is recap chapters 1 through 12 just to catch everybody up to pace, so everybody will understand my critiques, my compliments, and my etc. afterwards. So far within these earlier chapters of JOJOlands, it is really an introduction to what the main cast is going to be like. Jodio Joestar and Dragona Joestar are the descendants of Johnny Joestar and are relatives to Part 8 protagonist Josuke Higashikata. In the early chapters, these characters are shown to be kind of not your average Joestar. They are petty gangsters and criminals, selling drugs, beating up cops, and overall doing highly illegal things. However, on the flip side of that, Araki does take some time to really explain their lives outside of their criminal activities. And the one mainly taking up the spotlight here is of course our main protagonist Jodio Joestar, where we come to find out he's not the most mentally stable, but he is the most oddly driven out of all the characters we have seen so far, as he's trying to understand the mechanisms of this world and how they work, to eventually own a whole bunch of money, as that is his biggest goal in life right now, is to eventually get that goddamn bag. Aside from Jodio, we do get to learn about other crucial facts about other characters like Barbara Ann Joestar, Dragona, Paco, Meryl, and Usagi. For the most part, these earlier chapters are just establishing characters and the gang that we will be seeing for the most part. The overall vibe the crew gives off is something of a motley crew. They're basically still children or young adults working under a corrupt principal. However, that doesn't mean they don't get their shit done, and the first thing we do with this group is we go steal a $6 million diamond from a certain Japanese man, being Rohan Kishibe of the Steel Ball Run universe. They do end up getting the diamond successfully, but they also gain another piece of information with this diamond, or at least Jodio does: the lava rock. This lava rock has a unique property about it that only Jodio and Rohan Kishibe knows. This rock has the ability to gather valuable materials worth actual money closer to it, almost like it has this gravity or manipulation factor to it. As during the entire fight with Rohan Kishibe, the $6 million diamond was being drawn to the lava rock. After everything was said and done, of course, Rohan Kishibe bestows the rock to Jodio for safekeeping until he comes back for it. But now, since it's in the group's possession, we finally get some enemy stand user action, as a lot of people supposedly want this rock. And the first true enemy stand user we see fight the group is a bunch of cats, which is interesting and has not been seen in a very long time. On top of the stand fight, we do get to see what the rock does. There is a bit of shenanigans between the group, as Paco doesn't like certain members like Usagi, and the group is worried that it's not just one stand user they're fighting right now. Overall, the jungle warfare part of the story was pretty good, but since the group now knows that valuable items will be drawn to the lava rock, the team now wants to test it. The ones that will be testing it will be Dragona and Usagi, while on the flip side of that, Paco and Jodio will have to fight the new enemy stand user in front of them. With the investigation, we end up learning that objects with emotional connections, or when humans put value onto something, is what makes those objects get drawn towards the rock. The rock draws in things of emotional value of a high level that is actually worth something. On the flip side of that, Jodio and Paco are getting their ass beat by a guy with Halo active camo, so good for you guys. The boys totally didn't get the short end of the stick there, but regardless. After Dragona and Usagi finish their investigation, now they will help Jodio and Paco beat this guy. However, the enemy stand user ends up stealing the lava rock, and a full-blown chase has now begun, which ends up leading to a Jodio versus enemy stand user one-on-one fight. However, in a curious turn of events, Paco actually wants to invite the guy into the group, as Paco senses he's a full-blown rookie and actually has no mob affiliation whatsoever, and knows something about the lava rock even the group doesn't even know about. So overall, yeah, he would be a pretty good addition, just kind of weirdly timed, I guess. We would come to find out that his name is Charming Man, and yes, it is as dumb as it sounds. I do not know why his name is Charming Man. It's made fun of even in verse. Aside from the funny naming scheme, Charming Man's backstory is actually pretty relevant to the group. as it's pretty obvious that he knows something about the lava rock even the group doesn't even realize, as Charming Man sets this dark tone above Jodio's head. With Mary in possession of the $6 million diamond and the lava rock, thanks to Jodio and company, the plot now thickens as we conclude the story recap. And yes, I do know comment section, I didn't go over the entire thing. I don't want to be here for 20 minutes explaining all of the first 12 chapters of JoJolands. This is a review and critique, not an explanation video. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start this part of the video off with my critiques and worries of this part. Now I do want to clarify, my bad and worries for this part are very nitpicky at the current moment in time. I don't know if I have a lot of bias here, but I do like this part a lot, and I think Araki has improved a lot as a writer and an artist. So I really can't find a lot of bad things at the current moment in time. I can only predict what could eventually become bad. So fair warning for my critiques for this part. In these first 12 chapters, I'm noticing a lot of Araki habits that I personally do not like. The biggest one here, and this is kind of a Meta's original, I would say, is big main cast problems within JoJo's. There is this recurring trend in earlier JoJo parts with bigger cast screen time, in which, I'll just use an example here, Jotaro and Polnareff get a lot more screen time than Iggy, Avdol, Kakyoin, and Joseph combined. We really don't see what makes them characters, what makes them interesting. What these characters do for the most part is they have their introductory fight, establishes their cool factor, and then they don't have anything until their death arc or something like that, or just end up being boring the entire time. I'm looking at you, mister. All you did was shoot yourself, you lazy bum. However, I will say this, there is only 5 characters as of right now, unless we get the cats part of the team, because they may or may not be Charming Man's pets. That is still in discussion. So there is still a glimmer of hope for a much shared screen time among all of them evenly, or at least mainly Jodio and then the rest being even in terms of screen time and development for everybody. I honestly think Araki does better with small casts, or like having 2 to 4 main characters and then having a bunch of side characters show up for a little bit and eventually they leave. I think parts 1, 2, and 7 show this very well, and especially 4. I'm honestly telling you, man, 4 just did certain JoJo things so damn right that I will always go back to that part. The way that part felt with Josuke, Koichi, and Okuyasu, and the swap in of being like Rohan or Jotaro for that 4th person slot, and just having the additional side characters show up every once in a while, was done so great, and I wish Araki kept that going. And if Araki actually keeps that going within part 9, I won't lie, this might become a top tier part for me. That group dynamic is super important in JoJo's for me personally, and if Araki does fumble it, I won't lie, man, I'm going to be kind of disappointed. Leave it at 5 for now and call it good. And since we are still speaking about cast, I want to talk about Charming Man. Now, I know he only has a few chapters right now, but he seems pretty integral to the plot so far, and that gives me the ick as of right now. And what I mean by that is I don't want another Polnareff situation to show up where, for whatever reason, our plot switches from Jodio trying to figure out the mechanisms of life all of a sudden to switching over to where the hell is my brother, dog, like every few chapters, and we don't get to see Dragona, Paco, and Usagi's storylines and see where they develop as characters. I swear to God, if Paco or Dragona become Kakyoin 2.0, I'm gonna fucking flip my shit. I want to see everybody have equal screen time and equal development, at least roughly. And I swear, if Charming Man just gets all of it and Jodio, God forbid it's just only Charming Man, that would be insane, I will be heavily disappointed in this part. All of these characters have so much potential, so much interesting stories to tell. I hope we get to see all of it, truly, including Charming Man. He is interesting, but I don't want him to have all the spotlight. Now, in all fairness, I could be overreacting. He's only had a few chapters, but I'm just seeing Polnareff a lot here. But who knows, he might actually, after these few chapters, have no screen time and will never be elaborated on again, and that could also suck here. Can you tell I have PTSD with these bigger casts? I'm just wondering if it's noticeable by now, but anyway, switching gears. The Joestar siblings is a very, very interesting concept. However, it is a glass cannon. You can punch through a lot of shit with this thing. You can get so much character out of it, so much interesting character development between Dragona and Jodio. You can explore the universe with these two characters, understand the mechanisms, the rock plot, the further laws of the JoJo universe with these two characters, and it could be done masterfully. As compared to previous parts, it's only ever been a Joestar and a mentor really exploring the universe. However, in this example, you can have two Joestar siblings figure figuring it out. And yes, it's not the first time this has ever happened, but this could be the first time it's done well. However, going back to what I said at the start of this little section of the video, it is a glass cannon. It can punch really hard, but it is a cannon made of glass. It is extremely fragile. And what I mean by that is this. Currently right now, they are siblings. You can feel that between them. However, it is extremely shallow at the moment because, well, it's only been 12 chapters. However, if it never goes beyond this current point of shallowness between these two guys, it will be heavily disappointing and just be a slightly better variation of the sibling dynamic we saw in part 8. And in that one, it fucking sucked. It really wasn't there at all. So anything is a great improvement here. But if it doesn't move on from what it is right now with these first 12 chapters, I won't lie, I will be sad. Now, with my bad and worries out of the way for this part, let's talk about the good finally. Starting with the bad main characters. What I mean by bad is all of them are criminals and they damn well know it. The reason why I like it so much and why it's like really like a point I want to focus to show all of you is because in previous JoJo parts, it is pretty well established that the main cast of characters are all good guys. And yes, even part 5, they are gangsters, but their community treats them extremely well and they themselves are good, quote unquote. But in the case for Jodio and crew within JoJolands, they're not helping anybody but themselves. They are 100% assholes. Araki is doing something new where he is not making the main characters relatable, at least to a broader audience. While they do have flaws that you can relate to in a broader sense, not a lot of people that are reading this manga are going to be criminals. However, for a longtime reader like me and enjoyer of JoJo's, this is something new and fresh that I welcome with open arms. Araki is stepping outside his comfort zone for once and is not writing relatable characters for the audience. For such a long time, he's always written good guy characters. Hell, he's tried to write the pinnacle of justice multiple times. And while yes, he has made bad characters who are egotists, Jodio is not that. He is a criminal with psychological problems. And that just doesn't stop at the main Joestar. That's also for Dragona, Usagi, Paco, and even Charming Man. All these guys have a clear history of being a problem. And while some will not find that cool, at least in my opinion, and seeing how writing works, these are new avenues of characters and histories we can explore in JoJo's that are going to be wildly different from past things. So they're not going to be dull or boring by any means. They're going to be super fascinating in the long run. The reason why I'm so confident with this is Araki is treating it like that throughout all 12 of these chapters. There is not a single moment within 12 of these chapters where you go, wow, this person is morally upstanding and is positively morally aligned. Not once. There is a clear, distinguished tone of these guys are dickheads and they themselves know they are criminals and dickheads. And if you don't like that for whatever reason, try to see it from a different perspective. You've seen a good guy plot time and again. What about a bad guy plot or morally aligned negative person plot? It sounds much more interesting, right? And especially within JoJo's, am I right? Read the manga. I'm not telling you, I'm forcing you. Jokes aside, I love the main cast. I love how they're all criminals. I love how interesting it is so far. Everybody has some unique quirk to them that just, it gets me focused on them and I love it. I love this bad guy direction we're going here with this part. But in specific, I want to talk about one character that has basically grabbed me by the balls and I have my ass planted anytime a new chapter is released. I want to talk about Jodio. I might be glazing here and I realize that. And it might be some recency bias because I reread all these chapters in succession and it was honestly a really good read if you could not tell by the tone of the video, but this kid might be fucking generational, dog, and I'm not even kidding. There is something about Jodio that I cannot quite explain yet, but for whatever reason, how the story has been presenting him, how his dialogue has been shown and read, is that there's this realism to it. Comparing him to previous Joestars, he is utterly flawed. Previous Joestars almost seem unrealistic and too good, except for Johnny, we'll get to him. This realistic Joestar just adds this new level of where is he gonna go? How interesting will he be? I'm going to sit down and read to see where he goes. Like, that's the vibe and energy he gives off to me to where it makes me want to sit down and read. I think that's mostly because of his dialogue and narration. He doesn't sound like a Joestar. He sounds like a Brando, which leads me into this. I think Jodio is a combination of Johnny and and Diego, because Jodio, of course, is a universal opposite to Giorno, who is a combination of Jonathan and Dio. When you mix the character traits and personalities of Johnny and Diego together, you are going to get an interesting character. Diego was power hungry and wanted to prove himself to society, while Johnny was just kind of an egotist. He wanted to get to where he was back before he became crippled because he loved the status he had before that. Once you mix those two together with a child like this with clear mental issues, who is probably heading down a direction of trying to become a better person and progress through society and its problems, I don't know how you are going to come out and say he's bad or anything. It's pretty clear to see that Araki is trying to rewrite a character from years ago with the experience he has now to make a much better character. Jodio is going to be huge, man. I'm telling you with full confidence, he's probably going to be one of the best Joestars ever. You gotta love the Joestar and the Brandos. Now, moving on from the best character to the mechanism and the rock plot, there's something going on here too that I want to talk about. With previous plots, when it comes to the mystery aspect of JoJo, it almost seemed kind of secondary to whatever like the main plot was going on. It's like, we gotta kill this guy or something. Ooh boy, the Rokakaka, and it's mystery. That's how it felt. However, within this plot line, it all seems connected. The mystery is the plot this time around. I find it much more simplistic and a lot more linear and coherent that I'm much more interested in it than previous parts' plots. I think I worded that perfectly. I think I did. Good. I like the Lava Rock plot. It is so far extremely interesting, and almost as a secondary plot is to figure out the mechanism with Jodio, all to lead into a grander answer of how this world works, as within the Steel Ball Run universe there is this pretty heavy emphasis on the corpse parts and its repercussions, and this idea is going to be the main plot, unlike JoJolan, which had a lot of things going on which I personally didn't like, but this one seems a lot more straightforward, and that's why I like it. I don't know, there's just something about this story, the characters, it all just works perfectly together, and I'm reading this shit monthly every time. Meta's approved, 2 thumbs up. So I will add a minor good point here that I don't think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, I don't know why you added that Metas type of comment, but the stand fights. There is a pretty clear emphasis on human versus human than stand versus stand. It's new and it's interesting, and I'm kind of fucking with it. Note, there has not been a lot of stand fights as of right now, but I personally am really digging the whole human versus human, like martial arts action going on here. It's cool. It's a bit of a callback to earlier parts. I'm liking it. Now that concludes my good and bad sections for this video, but I do have one more, and it's called the funnies. These are just things I just found humorous or just kind of interesting that I wanted to talk about very briefly. The first one being Charming Man being a rock human only to be not a rock human, just a guy with a medical condition, was fucking hilarious. Everybody in the community, including myself, was convinced this guy was going to be the first like good rock human, only for him to be just some guy. It was just hilarious. Araki could pull the rug underneath us again to just reveal he's half rock human, which would be pretty cool, but I don't know, man, that whole scenario was just hilarious. Also, Araki is kind of going down a different direction with his art within this part so far. It's cool, a little bit weird, a little bit like minimalist in design. I don't know where it's going. I don't know if he's being lazy or it's being done on purpose. I think it's being done on purpose because it was in part 8, but I don't know about this. It's just something there. I thought it was kind of cool, a little bit interesting, a little bit funny at times as it looks almost out of place. Nothing really crazy to note here, but you know, cool, I guess. But the big one here in the funny section is Rohan. I don't know how to feel with him being in this part. I'm a bit of a Rohan hater, if you didn't know. I find him very weird and just out of place at sometimes with originally in part 4 and kind of in his own stories at times, but adding him here, I don't really know what it's going to add for the whole story in general. Cool that Rohan's here. He's clearly connected to the lava rock for some reason. However, just like part 4, I think Rohan is going to have as much relevancy as he did in part 4 to part 9. That's just my prediction. I don't think Rohan is going to become part of the main crew, personally speaking, just because Araki doesn't like to add previous characters and main character roles, only giving them brief appearances. But we'll see. I could be totally wrong. Could just be my Rohan hater coming out, but I digress. To bring it all together and to give my final thoughts on JOJOlands 1 year in, you need to read this shit now. I'm being so serious. Part 6 is done. Read 7, read 8, get to part 9. Get caught up right now. This story is going to be elite, and I want you here to read it live with me. I highly recommend JOJOlands 12 chapters in. I'm being so serious right now. Please get caught up and read it. I genuinely can say there is not a lot of JoJo's out there that get me intrigued this hard 12 chapters in. Well, with that being said, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, stay hydrated. See you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen.